I'm Alexis Gerard Finger, and I welcome you. I'm sure many people here are extremely sad and frustrated due to the various acts of discrimination occurring in the United States today. And those of us who care deeply about subjects as critical as racism and injustice look for ways to influence people's hearts and minds. And the People's Zoom Readers Theater was created for this purpose. Our motto is, better to light a single candle than to curse the darkness. Tonight, we hope you appreciate our performance of Asian Threads of the American Tapestry, which focuses on the past and present injustices endured by the Asian community. And we hope you stay for our follow-up discussion and share your experiences so that you too can educate and inspire us to be better. Thank you.
Maya Angelou understood America's particular strength and uniqueness when she said, "Diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all the threads of the tapestry are equal in value, no matter what their color." Knowing about the remarkable Asian threads that have contributed enormously to the creation and growth of the United States, members of the People's Zoom Readers Theater are heartbroken by the verbal and physical abuse Asians are subjected to in the United States. The goal of this performance is to raise the level of awareness of this problem so that more of us are part of the solutions. Stereotypes may be useful for comedians, but they serve no good for the rest of us. They're often poison pellets inspired by hate that are used to hurt and sometimes destroy. Nevertheless, we still see and hear them. We are in a shelter below the Singing Bamboo, a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. It's an evening in the summer of 2021 when there was a tornado alert in the city.
Welcome. In spite of this weather, I want to personally thank each of you for coming out tonight to this important meeting sponsored by the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and for staying with us, even as we had to resume our meeting in this spacious shelter provided by the Chang family. For those of you who are just joining us and don't know me, I'm Helen Fields, the Associate Director of this community organization. We are here tonight mainly to discuss the hate crimes the Asian community is experiencing. We want to understand the causes and suggest possible solutions. One thing we know for sure is this: ignorance is never our friend. It is easy to hate people simply because we don't know anything about them, and it's easy to use them as scapegoats when our own lives are in crisis. Therefore, it's imperative that we recognize and understand the history of Asian hate in the United States, and then make a concerted effort to alter the thinking that fuels today's harassment and acts of violence. Most of you have been invited to our meeting either because you can educate us about the history and root of the problem, or you can benefit by better understanding the problem. All of you are welcome to share your experiences and recommendations for combating the hate that is harming our Asian community.
Before you continue, Helen, I would just like to say we are so grateful that you and others are here now. You are all welcome to help yourself to food and tea that we provided on the table in the corner. We don't want anybody who missed dinner because of the alert to go hungry.
Oh, thank you, Fed. That's very kind of you and your family.
Yes, it is. We're grateful for your generous hospitality.
Gracias. I was a bit late, so I will definitely aprovecharme.
If it's all right, I would like to start us off with an upsetting experience I just had this past weekend. My daughter Shu and I went to the mall to get a reward for winning a very competitive contest. While we were waiting in line for the pretzels, A kid around 14 years old who was standing in front of us asked us to keep distance from him. We were shocked and hurt by this request. I thought to myself, if he is so concerned about getting the virus, why was he standing right next to a guy who was a different race? It was clear. It's because we are Asian. He looked at us as though we were the virus. When I asked him why it was okay to stand next to other people and boldly asked him if he was discriminating against us because we speak a different language, he threatened to call his mother. I don't understand. Why did this child think it was okay to speak to my daughter and me in this way? Did it make him feel better about himself? Did his mother teach him it was okay to speak to Asian people in this way? Where are these negative messages coming from?
Mylene, you're asking good questions. I'm terribly sorry this happened to you and your daughter too.
My daughter has asked me questions I really can't answer. When a boy in school started making fun of her, when students returned to in-class learning, she came home in tears and asked me, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with my face? All I could say was, nothing is wrong with you. Everything is right. You have a beautiful face and you are a beautiful child. Please don't let anybody make you feel less than the special person you are.
That's a wonderful response. And it's so true.
What else could I say? Of course, I believe it's true, but it doesn't answer my daughter's questions or those that many of you, I'm sure, will pose today. It's never been right. Asians have never been treated with the respect and appreciation we deserve. But the treatment today is beyond disrespectful. Often it's criminal.
It is criminal. And those sickos who are physically hurting people and property should be found and thrown into jail.
I totally agree, but punishment isn't going to change the way people think. The problem is greater than what we witness people doing. It's a way of thinking that has to change. Nobody should have to endure such nasty, hurtful behavior.
You're absolutely right. And that's exactly why we are here.
What is that knocking?
It's a connecting door. I'll get it. Please come in.
Sorry to bother you. Don't want to interrupt. I know you are hosting a meeting, which I had planned to attend.
Please come in.
Thanks. It's really dangerous out there, and I found these three outside suspiciously wandering around when everybody else moved inside. We don't want any fatalities from the storm. I hope it's all right if we join you.
Of course, Jim. We're beholden to the Changs who kindly built this shelter a few years ago, and it's for the community. All are welcome. Never thought we'd need it. One more proof of climate change.
Hey, officer, this place looks too crowded. Maybe my sister and I should find another place.
Yeah, I think I should go too.
No, it's okay. Please come in and sit down, all of you.
Look, we don't want to bother you. It's really crowded here. Come on, Silver, let's go.
Excuse the cliche. There's always room for one more. In this case, 4 more. Officer Mallory, thank you for escorting these people here.
Yeah, thanks. Tom, let's stay. It's scary out there.
I'm willing to take my chances.
Would you like something to drink, Mr.?
Carl, is this your place?
Yes, the Singing Bamboo, which is above. It's our family restaurant.
So, why do you run this shelter if you have a restaurant?
It's important to have a safe place for our community in an emergent situation like this one.
It's hot. You must be thirsty. Would you like something to drink, Mr.?
I'm okay. Really. But you know what? Thanks. I really think we should be going.
As I was saying,
Excuse me, Helen. Officer Mallory? I don't think this young lady looks well.
oh, so
Yes, I think before you continue, we need to find out why this young lady doesn't look so well. Do you understand?
not really, but
Hey, look, she's okay. Leave her alone.
But she doesn't look too well.
Why do you care?
Because she is in our shelter.
So, lots of people are here. And I see there is a meeting going on. Look, why are you focusing on us?
Perhaps it's because you look familiar.
What are you talking about?
I think you're confused. Mr.
Tom.
Oh,
And what do you mean?
I think you doubt we care because you feel bad.
What? Feel bad about what?
perhaps you can understand why we want no harm to come to you and your sister when, I regret to say, you seem to want to harm us.
Are you crazy? What harm? What are you talking about?
I think Mrs. Chang is talking about your writing on the sidewalk outside the restaurant. You wrote some very ugly things.
And I think you smashed the windows in my uncle's store.
He didn't do that.
How do you know?
He's my friend. And I know because
Because perhaps you did it? You look very familiar too.
you are wrong. That's not true.
Well, our security camera doesn't make mistakes.
Did it see me too?
Quiet, Silver. Don't say anything else.
And you are?
I'm Silver, Tom's sister. So what are you going to do?
I assume you know we've done is wrong. In fact, criminal.
Do you think what we did is worse than what you people are doing?
What do you mean?
You know,
That's something we can talk about later. Right now, Mr. and Mrs. Chang, you have the right to press charges against these people.
Officer Mallory, thank you very much for your help with this. But right now, I would like to reserve judgment about bringing charges, if that's okay.
What do you mean? What do you want from us? This is sick.
I'm sorry about that. Perhaps it's the kind of sick a person feels when they see hateful things written on their sidewalk.
Or a broken window.
So, I would like to know why you wrote those things.
I'm not ashamed of what I did.
Really? Why did you write, "Killers go home and take the Chinese flu with you"? You really think we killed anybody? Do we look like killers?
Wayne, please keep your voice down.
Well, all due respect, Dad. I'm tired of keeping my head and my voice down. I'm disgusted with people like this. It's time we fight back. Arresting these people is the least we can do.
Please, Wen, I understand your frustration, but
Don't you see? It's time we make some noise. Lots of noise. It's important to force these people to tell us to our faces why. Why do you hate us so much? Why do you and others like you think it's right to treat us with such respect, with violence?
I'm Hiroto Tanaka. I own the grocery store down the street, and I think Wayne is right to ask this question.
I own a Korean restaurant and my brother owns the local hardware store. And I'm all in favor of making noise. We are all in this together. What do you have against us?
I'm interested in the answer too. I'm Cam Nguyen and my family owns the Vietnamese noodle restaurant a few blocks away. Perhaps my restaurant was next on your list. I want answers too. Isn't it this why we are here, Helen? Are you okay with this before we get to your agenda?
Of course, this is our agenda.
Hey, if you are going to arrest us, we want to leave. It can't be worse outside with a tornado swirling around.
You see us all gathered here today? Our goal is to stop hate crimes, stop the things you are doing. Tell us why you are doing this. ¿Por qué?
That's right. We want to know why our parents are afraid to walk around in a neighborhood they helped build.
And why our children are afraid to go to school.
Can you understand that we are all very frustrated and tired of worrying about the safety of our family and our own safety and the safety of our businesses?
Hey, you can't blame all of this on us. You think we are the only ones who are angry?
You're right. Surely there are others. We know it. A lot of destructive behavior is coming from the homeless community and unfortunately from people who are mentally disturbed. And we have to address those problems. But you're here now. So tell us, why are you so angry? Angry enough to hurt people, hurt property? All of us who live or work in this community or nearby are trying really hard to understand the cause of this Asian hatred and find solutions. So please tell us, help us understand.
I'll tell you, our mother would be alive today if it weren't for the Chinese flu.
She died from that flu. It's not right. She was a good person. She did nothing wrong. It's all you people's fault. You brought this disease here and now it's killing good people, like my mother and my cousin, Marley, too.
Surely you can't blame the Changs or other Chinese Americans for the death of your mother. It is a terrible thing that she died. All loss of life to this virus is tragic. I'm sure it hurts you very, very much. But blaming people who have nothing to do with the COVID virus won't help you.
Well, then, who should we blame, huh? I lost my older brother. He suffered for 6 weeks on a ventilator, and then he died. The virus started in China. The owner of this house and restaurant is Chinese.
Do you really think there is a connection between a virus that was first reported in a province in China and the people in this neighborhood? Do you think the people in that province in China have not suffered as well? Millions of people got the virus. Many people died. We are still learning how a virus can jump from animals to humans. It has happened before.
Do you blame all the people in the Republic of the Congo in Africa for the death of the Americans who died from AIDS?
Or should we blame the people in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE for MERS, which started in 2012 in the Arabian Peninsula? People in 27 countries were affected.
That's ridiculous. Look, we don't know anything about what you're talking about.
My father died from the COVID virus. I'm angry too. Well, what good does it do to blame anybody?
Honestly, I would like to blame the person who didn't vaccinate and didn't take proper precautions to avoid spreading the disease while taking care of my father after his hip operation.
I could blame the doctor who didn't even try to save my aunt, didn't try to obtain the medicine that saved the former president, the person who called it the Chinese flu. But how will blaming these people lessen the pain of loss that I feel for me and my children?
Stop it. Stop talking. My head is throbbing. I hear you. Maybe it doesn't make that much sense. Still, somebody is to blame.
Yeah, but who?
Okay, it's not just the virus. There is something going on here, something that makes it easier for your people to get into good schools and to make money, a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for all of you to take good jobs away from the rest of us. You seem to jump over other people.
That's true. You people came here and took our jobs.
And what people are you talking about? I assume you're talking about people of Asian descent, right? And what jobs are you talking about? I mean, during the gold rush in the mid-1800s, Chinese immigrants came to do mining and ended up working on the Transcontinental Railroad, which opened the markets of the West Coast and Asia to the east.
I wonder how many people know this.
I'm sure not enough, but it was very important work. It was very tiring. It wasn't the kind of job that most people wanted. We were manual laborers who shoveled 20 pounds of rocks over 400 times a day. It was dangerous. Lots of accidental explosions and snow and rock avalanches killed many hundreds of Chinese workers. And if that wasn't bad enough, many died from that frigid weather and disease. If you think they made a lot of money, well, it was only $1 per day. White workers were paid $1.50 to $2.50 per day, and they didn't need to pay for food or gear like the Chinese did. I know all of this to be true. My grandfather was one of the lucky survivors, and I say lucky because he wasn't killed by an explosion. But that kind of work took its toll. Every day, my grandmother cried, knowing that this kind of labor would take its toll on my grandfather's body. She was right. He didn't even make it to his 40th birthday.
Yeah, that's bad. But that was a long time ago.
Then you must be thinking of the other jobs that were available for Chinese workers and still are. Farm hands, gardeners, domestics, laundry workers, and dry cleaning jobs. For a long time, these were the only jobs we could legally have. Or, and one more, cooks. Our ancestor applied Chinese techniques to American ingredients. Chop suey, which means leftovers, became pretty popular in this country.
Thank goodness Asian food is still popular. I am so grateful that our family restaurant does well enough to provide for all the members of our family.
And the Asian food trucks that some of our friends operate by the universities do well. But nobody lost jobs because of them.
My ancestors created an industry, nail salons. This also has become a successful business, and we have not taken this job away from anybody.
You know, it's an old story. I'm Judge Lincoln, and I'm old enough to know that the people who are here resent the people who come next. But the newcomers don't take their jobs. They take whatever's left over, or they create their own. Many Jews, when they arrived in America, became tailors, pawnbrokers, and shopkeepers. Those were the jobs that were available.
The Irish became servants or domestic workers, coal miners, blacksmiths, construction workers, fishermen, and shoemakers.
Italians became farmers, coal miners, wine growers, tunnel diggers, layers of railroad tracks, and construction workers.
Latino workers found jobs in farming, fishing, and forestry. And we can go on and on. Few people started at the top. They had to work their way up.
It's a sad story that this nation of immigrants is also a nation of intolerance and discrimination. Every ethnic group you mentioned has faced all kinds of verbal and physical attacks when they first came here.
Of course, there are many good people who have welcomed new immigrants, encouraged them, and provided opportunities. But too many people have resented and blamed the newcomers for their own lack of work and taken out their own misfortune on people who sweat and save in order to provide for their families.
I know all of you here realize that hating and blaming people, using them as scapegoats, just like Hitler did to the Jews in Europe, doesn't help. If only we can find a way to demonstrate the futility of such behavior. So many deaths of innocent people, and for what? I guess this meeting of ours is turning out to be more informative than even I expected.
I'm learning things I'm ashamed to admit I never knew.
I agree, Tom, Carl, Silver. You may not be so happy to be here, but as angry as we are with what you've done, we're grateful you're here. We genuinely want to understand your point of view, and hopefully with some history, some knowledge, people like you can change your way of thinking.
I hope you're right, Judge. Surely a lot of resentment comes from not knowing the truth about different minority groups. If anybody here thinks it's been easy for our Asians to get ahead, I think this is a perfect time, Yang, for you to give the talk you were planning on about the history of Asian discrimination. Unfortunately, anti-Asian racism goes way back.
Thank you, Anita. Certainly. In the late 19th century, a rise in Chinese immigration triggered the yellow pearl stereotype.
What's a yellow pearl stereotype?
It refers to the fact that Asians, particularly the Chinese, would invade and destroy Western values like democracy, Christianity, and can you believe this? Technological innovations. And this fear justified policies like the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which stopped all immigration of Chinese laborers.
And let's not forget the Page Act of 1875 that barred Chinese women from entering the country.
Why?
Chinese women were believed to spread sexual disease. We were considered a threat to white values and white people. As a result of these fears, by 1924, all immigration from Asia had been completely banned.
And the Chinese who were here, well, as you might imagine, were willing to work for less. This angered the white American workers who were worried about keeping their own jobs. So they started portraying us as mysterious, dangerous, a threat to American independence and freedom. The motto was, the Chinese must go. And it worked.
I'm embarrassed to say that our country's legal framework dehumanized Asian immigrants and in turn emboldened Americans to brutalize them.
I don't know if anybody here knows about the Chinese massacre of 1871. It's tragic. A white mob hanged nearly 20 Chinese immigrants in makeshift gallows in Los Angeles.
Korean farm workers were attacked too by an angry mob in 1913. And like other Asians, were subjected to employment restrictions and housing segregation.
So what did people do?
Many ended up as tenant farmers and opened small businesses, like barbershops and rooming houses that catered to people who weren't permitted to use facilities reserved for whites. This situation lasted until 1952, during the Korean War.
It is tragic. But consider thinking at that time, it shouldn't come as a surprise that the Chinese were the first race and class-based group to be singled out by American immigration law. And these laws weren't repealed until 1943, when Congress established an immigration quota for China of about only 105 visas per year.
What happened in 1943? Why did the government change its policy toward Chinese?
Fortunately, during World War II, American policymakers didn't feel so comfortable about the image of America with this kind of policy. Understandable, right? So when the government was interested in winning the hearts and minds in Asia, they decided to overturn Chinese exclusion as a goodwill gesture to China, which was, if you remember, Americans' ally in World War II.
Yes, I do remember this. It's really ironic. When things got a little better for the Chinese, it got so much worse for my people, the Japanese. We had a long history here too. My ancestors came in the 1860s. They were farmers and fishermen. My great-grandparents worked in sugarcane fields in Hawaii and then later in California. But no surprise, because they were very good at cultivating and marketing fruits and vegetables, white farmers resented them. So probably not too many people objected when, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the president issued an order that authorized the evacuation of all Japanese to internment camps.
That doesn't sound fair.
It wasn't. It was terrible. We had nothing to do with the Japanese assault on Pearl Harbor or any aspect of Japan's war with America. But, you know, Japanese Americans were a scapegoat during World War II. We were the enemy. I mean, can you imagine if this happened to you? You're a good citizen, you do everything right, and now you have to leave your home, leave your school, leave your business that took years of work to sacrifice to build.
All Japanese men, women, and children?
That's right.
I don't understand. I really don't understand. What were these camps like? I mean, did this last a long time?
The camps were surrounded by barbed wire fences and patrolled by guards. I get very upset whenever I even recall how my grandparents lost everything. They lost their home and their business.
How long did this go on?
It lasted for 4 long years.
My Vietnamese relatives did not experience internment camp in the United States, but when they came after the Vietnam War, most Americans did not want us here. My grandparents knew they were reminders of a lost war and an economic burden, but it was also racism. My grandparents were a terrible reminder of a lost war, and let's face it, that makes sense. But the violence, the KKK tried to drive Vietnamese Americans out of Texas by burning their houses and boats.
How terrible. I'm so sorry. And the sad fact is that for all of us, Hollywood hasn't done us any favors. I've often thought that the negative stereotypes of all Asian people we've seen in the movies weren't healthy. I'm sure they have contributed to the ease, yes, ease, in which anti-Asian crimes have been tolerated.
I agree. They are accepted in ways crimes against other people wouldn't have been.
This is a good point. When you see images of Asians involved in gambling, prostitution, and drugs, it makes it easier for people to attack us. Even Asian grandmothers who are clearly innocent of any of these behaviors.
I didn't want to say anything tonight, but I feel I must force myself to speak up. Those stereotypes that you are talking about have nothing to do with me or anybody I know. I'm too young to even know about those stereotypes, but that doesn't seem to matter. When I was walking down the street, I can't help but wonder, am I walking the right way? Am I wearing clothes that send the wrong message? Would I be better off if I wore a coat, even when it's 90 degrees outside? Maybe I should wear a big hat to hide my hair and sunglasses to hide my face. Do we have to erase who we are to avoid harassment? Is this the future for us?
No, of course not. You shouldn't have to live this way.
I wonder what went through the mind of that woman who pushed an old Asian woman to the ground. She was doing nothing more than waiting for a train. What could possibly have motivated this woman to do that? And what is causing people to behave like animals? No, worse than animals that I know.
If there wasn't a video, I don't know that I would have believed it. But it showed a group of female youths brutally beating two passive Asian people on a SEPTA train in Philadelphia. I said, ¿por qué? What could possibly justify this attack?
Okay, I get it. It's terrible. There's no justification. There's been a lot of terrible behavior toward all minorities, a lot of discrimination. But you can't compare this with everything Black Americans have endured since they were brought to America as slaves.
No, Carl, you are right. It's not the same. Black people were forced to come here, but unfortunately, there are similarities. Just as Black people were living under Jim Crow laws, Asians were under an exclusion regime that would sound familiar to Black people. And that didn't end until 1952.
Asian Americans were often restricted to segregated neighborhoods and segregated schools. They were barred from certain kinds of employment, either by law or by custom. Many who were able to get a college education ended up working menial jobs.
And sadly, Asians also had very limited options for social mobility. And there was violence too. Lynchings. That sound familiar?
You know, comparisons do not serve us well. There are no prizes for the people who have been discriminated the most. But I should point out something that has been documented. Asian Americans, unlike any other minority group, are more likely to be hurt by members of other minority groups. And this is a problem.
Now, why is that?
Oh, probably because of the pandemic. But the truth is, minority groups are purposely pitted against each other. I'm sure you can guess why.
What do you mean, pit you against each other?
I'll give you an example. A recent study showed that Asian Americans are considered to be a model minority, economically successful because of their hard work. And this study was advertised in a way that had caused resentment. So, when other minority groups hear something like this, as you have clearly heard, they become angry and envious. They feel we have been given an extra advantage. But the truth is that Asian Americans are economically diverse. There are those who in our community who are wealthy and successful, many whose parents came here already educated and skilled, prepared for higher level jobs. Yes, it is an advantage, but they didn't steal anything from anybody, as has been suggested.
And let's not forget there are many who are poor, very poor.
Many of us are just small restaurant or store owners in economically depressed neighborhoods. Surely this is obvious.
Yes, Patel, but that doesn't seem to matter. When the economic situation is bad, Asians are special targets of violence. And when you have a virus like COVID and powerful leaders like the president of a country fomenting anger at Chinese people with his unique megaphone, every person harboring any form of resentment was given a license to verbally and physically abuse anybody of Asian descent.
Sadly, you are right. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard people say, you Asian need to be put in your place. No matter how many years we have lived here, earned our place in this country, we hear things like this. And when I hear this, I think, why? What place? This is my country. This is my home. I am already in my place. Because of Asian persistent emphasis on education and hard work, we have been contributing to the growth of America since the 1840s in just about every field: economics, science, technology, and of course, cuisine.
You are right, Mr. Najan. We've also contributed a lot to entertainment, sports, medicine, education, and literature, and so much more.
True. Nobody has anything to be ashamed of. We should all be proud, and our children should be proud. My parents worked 24 hours a day to make enough money for me and my sister to give us a decent life. And my sister and I helped with a family variety goods store when we were growing up. Now I'm carrying on. It's the best I can do. But it's okay. It's the family store. I'm proud to try to keep it going.
And you have a wonderful store. I really like to shop there.
Thank you, June. But it's hard to keep it going when people who are angry come in and take what they want, point a gun or knife, grab and knock over things that are easily breakable, destroy things, or just grab them and run. Yes, they take things we need to sell to provide us with a decent living. Forgive me, I'm usually not so emotional, but the fear we constantly live is getting to me and my family.
Hannah, it saddens me deeply to hear what you and others here have been dealing with.
Sadly, people feel justified. Truth is the image of us as foreign has been ingrained. It hasn't changed much over the years. So when misinformed people connect us with the coronavirus, too many people believe it.
It's true. Now the excuse is the virus. What was the excuse when I was growing up when somebody called me a chink? And it wasn't only once. Remember, Mei-Ling? Remember the days I came home in tears? I can't tell you how many times I was harassed, even in school. It's many years later, and now I'm still encountering strangers addressing me with their eyes pulled back into a slant, taunting me with expressions like yellow fever. It's awful.
Even at my age, I've seen people making a show of keeping their distance from me in a crowded subway. I'm sorry, Mei-Ling. You and Shu had to experience this too.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to tell you that I've had strangers bump their shoulders into me or poke things at me and tell me to I wanted to strike back, but I had to catch myself. How would I benefit? Like many of you, my parents won't go outside without a hat or sunglasses and double masks, and we're not even Chinese.
It troubles me that others can witness these terrible things and pretend nothing is wrong. A month ago, when a man shouted "chink" while looking straight at me, not one person came to my defense. I was so embarrassed.
Unfortunately, we are not alone. I've read that in 2020, anti-Asian crimes spiked by 149% in large cities. Between March and December 2020, there are reports of 2,800 incidents of violence and discrimination directed at Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. In 2021, there was an even greater number of incidents, and women are twice as likely as men to report coronavirus-related harassment. This has to stop.
You know what really worries me a lot? What makes today worse in some way? It's the way the internet and social media are used. Can you believe that a slap an Asian challenge was circulating through social media? If I did occasionally look at Facebook and Twitter, I never would have believed what's out there. So much misinformation, outright lies, and hateful comments that heighten the tension and anger that already exists, and certainly reinforces negative stereotypes.
That's true. The reinforcement of negative stereotypes is so dangerous. They can easily influence, even empower children and adults who are angry to do terrible things.
I don't think anybody here today thinks there is any reason why Asians of any kind deserve harassment, name calling, or violence. Am I right, Tom?
Yes, you are right. I am very, very sorry.
I feel terrible. I had no idea.
Yeah, we really didn't know a lot of this stuff that you're telling us today. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that we are so ignorant. Just like the truth about slavery and systemic racism that has affected all minority groups. History about Asians has purposely been omitted in our textbooks and in our movies.
Carl, you're right. It was on purpose. People who have held the reins of power in our country have been petrified of becoming a minority. They call it replacement theory. They have purposely perpetrated a divide between Asian Americans, Blacks, Indigenous people, and other peoples of color. This includes religious minorities, Jews, Muslims, and this effort is still going on. In fact, in a really big way.
The conclusions that have been suggested here tonight are very disturbing, but ignoring the truth won't help any of us here. So now, like other enlightened communities, we call on all people to unite and fight all warriors of hate in every neighborhood. We must fight this poison together if our democracy is to survive. We are extremely grateful to law enforcement, officers like you, Officer Mallory, for your help. But this is not your job alone.
Thank you, Helen. I totally agree. And as a member of law enforcement, I'm very grateful for the kind of thinking I'm hearing here tonight. We're all in this together. And that means people in my field need to be better trained so they are not adding to the problem.
So where do we start?
Well, how about jailing these 3 people who admitted what they did?
Wayne, do you really think this is the best way forward if we are to achieve our goal of unity?
Aren't you tired of turning the other cheek? If these people aren't punished, what is the message? It's okay to treat us like dirt?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Nobody should get away with for treating anyone this way.
I think I have an alternative solution. How about a week or 2 of community service? What do you think, Fen, Yang, Mei-Ling, Wayne? Is there something that Silver, Tom, and Carl could do for your members of your community for a week or so?
What a great idea. They can start with cleaning up the pavement.
And how about helping to repair Uncle's store window?
I think that's a reasonable start. Escorting some of our senior citizens to and from market and community center would also be appreciated and meaningful for everybody.
Well, Silva, Tom, Carl, what do you think?
Sure, I appreciate this way.
Yeah, me too. We are angry about a lot of things. Seeing family die. Well, I guess we needed to see others hurt too. It's wrong. We were wrong. And we are lucky to have another chance.
Yeah, in many ways, we were ignorant too. I'm grateful for your lenience, and I'm grateful for the information you gave us, the history. In some way, many of us have become something like pawns for the people who have destructive agendas. I'm ashamed.
Well, I guess I should be grateful too. Grateful you came here and we all had a chance to learn something.
So it's settled? But before we leave this shelter, I'd like us to have something tangible, something official that we can use moving forward. Recommendations that we can take to the mayor's office. De acuerdo, Helen?
Absolutely. Let's hear some concrete suggestions that we can propose to the mayor. After all, we are the city of brotherly and sisterly love.
I think we feel that for the benefit of all, we must work together. Not just minority races and religions, but all good, decent people. Ours should not be a war against people in power. Ours should be a 21st century movement of all good people who care about the future and share our values, the things that concern us all.
And our goals? Our goal has to be to move forward with a more equitable system of education on all levels. And you are right, for all of our children, not just those who share our backgrounds. Every school in every neighborhood should be clean and safe and offer classes that prepare all our children for a promising future.
You remind me of a famous quote I have here right on my phone. President John F. Kennedy said, "No American is ever made better off by pulling a fellow American down, and every American is made better off whenever any of us is made better off. A rising tide raises all boats."
It certainly makes sense now. We are advocating a united front against hate, systemic inequality, and we need more dialogue that can hopefully prevent more destruction.
I think we need to speak to our leaders in education, politics, and business. Speak to them about the importance of supporting each other. When I read that the principal of a private school was concerned about the need for better funding for public schools, I felt optimistic. I mean, it's one person, but it's a new way of thinking. We shouldn't be competing. We should be working together for the benefit of all.
More town meetings for interactive discussions, I think, are needed. We must reach out to people who feel ignored and displaced, people who feel left out of the successes they know exist, even in their own neighborhoods. We need to help others who are less fortunate.
We know our enemies: hate, misinformation, and jealousy. They can be ruthless. I support everything you've all said. We can't let these evils win. And the only way to defeat these destroyers of civilization is to create a united front of people who support each other and refuse to be divided.
And we must reject violence.
I think we should recommend that all children in all grades learn in an age-appropriate way the history of Asian Americans, along with the history of African Americans and Native Americans and other minorities. It is probably the best way to reduce the otherness factor that many believe help fuel the different attacks that Asians are experiencing.
I certainly agree with you, but I don't think it'll be so easy. Remember, there are people out there who, for reasons I can't understand, are not really interested in having our children learn the truth about any embarrassing aspect of our history. Consider the controversy over critical race theory. Huh?
I know. You're right about that. There are people who have turned the teaching of the real history of America into a political issue. It's tragic that many people think our children are better off with a fairy tale history. We have to fight this together. They need to learn the truth.
Well, I'm ready to fight for this. And I'm also ready to advocate for more money for our homeless people, many mentally disturbed people. Their needs must be addressed. You were right when you mentioned these people before. Research has shown that too many sick homeless people are committing much of the violence. They use minority groups as scapegoats.
I'm hearing lots of great ideas, but until they are implemented, what can we do now, especially to protect our elders and our handicapped?
Well, we can offer our services to our neighbors.
We should have a night patrol, a community corps of escorts that are available, especially when it's dark.
I have an idea. Perhaps it's too idealistic, but I think it's worth pursuing. Since we are the city of brotherly and sisterly love, we could establish a special day, Diversity Day, or Día de Diversidad. On such a day, every community center and maybe even houses of worship will be encouraged to provide activities that welcome people of all races, religion, ages, genders, nationalities, languages, and sexual orientations.
I like it. There could be discussions, games. We can make meals together and distribute them to shelters and nursing homes. What do you think?
It's ambitious, but I like it too. People with different backgrounds doing something positive together. Definitely the way to go.
This all sounds great, but honestly, aren't you all being a bit too optimistic? Haven't we heard things like this before?
I won't deny the fact that we've heard a lot of great ideas before that never materialized and never turned into action.
So why is this time different?
Well, like you, Mr. Nee, I am a bit skeptical. I'm also tired, very tired of being disappointed. But I think this time could be different. I'm beginning to see more interest, more determination, more young people eager to change. I just hope I'm right.
I hope you're right too. But if we don't vote for people who support our way of thinking, the initiatives that we shared tonight, well, nothing will change.
Yes, Maylene, we hear you. Well, dear good people, it's not that we aren't enjoying your company, but it seems to be calm outside now. I think we've made a lot of progress, more than I ever anticipated. I look forward to the help we will be getting from you, Tom, Silver, and Carl.
Yes, ma'am. We are very, very grateful for your forgiveness and your kindness.
I have to admit that I've learned a lot tonight.
I think we all did. And we thank the Changs for their hospitality, and thank you to all of you who came here today.
And so, everyone, your homework assignment is please contact your houses of worship, community centers, and other places. Please see if there is any interest in our suggestions. Perhaps they can offer additional ideas. And before you leave tonight, please sign your name and provide your email address and telephone numbers. And I will contact you in 2 weeks and we can set up another meeting. Today's discussion was just the beginning. And hopefully neither sun, snow, earthquakes, tornadoes, or hurricanes will get in our way. Enjoy the rest of your night, knowing we can if we have the will to make a difference.
We hope you enjoyed our performance and better understand and appreciate the problem of Asian hate and possible ways we can eliminate it. Now we welcome your experiences and your suggestions for overcoming the problems we discussed.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you for all of the performers. This is something that we all have to work together on, and this was just to raise awareness and to bring us together to share. If nothing else, it's an opportunity to vent, but mainly it's to empower each other so that when we see something, we speak up and we speak out. So, okay, anybody want to start? Okay, Toby?
Well, thank you, all of you, fellow Readers Theaterites. I was in one of several of the original ones, and it's great to see again this amazing, diverse community of people who are all really sharing values that are really important today. Really important, really important. So thanks for doing that, and thanks to Alexis for digging deeply into some history I didn't know, actually. So it was great. It was great to learn some of that history. And to Shana Tova, to you, Amy. Happy New Year to all of you. I just wanted to say thank you, always, to see this incredible group of people. And I miss you. I miss being in person with you and hearing all of your stories.
We missed you, and Toby was definitely a founding mother, sister of this Readers Theater. So we always thank you, Toby, for sure. Anybody else want to share something, say something?
I think many of us can also relate from other either religious groups we're part of or racial upbringing and so forth. So you could put different terms in there instead of just the Asian every time. And we have sometimes faced similar difficulties.
Yeah.
Hi, Toby. It's good to see you, Toby. Hi. Some of us go way back to some of the original performances, so it's good to see some old returnees online.
I think the term model minority, first of all, everybody did great. I'm sorry I missed this one back then, but the pressure that puts on members of those minority groups, whether it's an intellectual trait or a physical trait or any kind of the positive turns into backfires because of the pressure it puts on. And it's something you think about. And I was kind of jotting down, just little kind of lists, gay guys are supposed to be decorators, just those kinds of things, the Asian and the math, all that. And I think that's the pressure that puts on the members of the group can, even oppress you more. So how something positive becomes negative, I guess that's my point. That's what's so upsetting.
Thank you for sharing that, Mark. Yeah, that's so true.
And I didn't know chop suey meant leftovers.
There you go. All right. Anybody else would like to say something?
Hi, it's Risa here, and it's so nice to be here. And we just we're so impressed. We love these because we agree it's such an accessible format to talk about really hard and important things, and it's so comprehensive. You talked about critical race theory in schools, and even at the end, a little bit of restorative justice with not necessarily sending someone to prison, or there's so many nuances that are covered in a short time in a really creative way that really is accessible and humanizing. So thank you. We really enjoyed it and learned a lot too.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. And I'll just share again, well done, everybody who was a part of this. I know it's not easy and it can be very, very tedious to put together. So it all came together and really flowed beautifully. I was just thinking about how I think the older I get, I'm increasingly aware of how far back, how much further back history goes, and how much more there is to unearth about the stories of so many, and how much maybe I wasn't paying so much attention in elementary school, but I don't think a lot of these stories were shared, and how important it is to continue to do that archaeology and to unearth those stories and to see that as a valuable cause, and not one to make us, put up our defenses and our shields and to try to minimize or compartmentalize or deny the depths and meaning and significance of the impacts of these difficult and tragic and harmful elements of the system. So thank you everybody for being a part of that. And I imagine that the people who are a part of this production learned the most by playing those characters and understanding and letting those stories unfold.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here, and I really appreciate your comments. Yeah.
It's interesting that we're talking about history, dating back to the 19th century and so on, exclusionary acts of, the early 1900s and so on. It persists. All we have to do is think of the Exclusion Act that took place, a short time ago with Muslims entering this country. It's the same kind of political pressures, different group, but it's still there. It's still in our midst. And the question is, why is this so? Why do we permit it as a democracy? I know we're a very diverse country. There are those who want to keep it very pure, white European, but that's not primarily what we are. And, I think there's a real critical issue here and that's the one of how do we take control of the representatives that, are in the majority and prevent these kinds of exclusionary political acts from happening in the future.
Yeah. Yes. Excellent point. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add to the last two speakers, because I think this was your hardest hitting political piece yet. I thought it was brilliant, and congratulations to all the speakers. It's a lot to put together and it's heartrending. It's heartrending to still hear a mother say, I'm worried about what my daughter is going to feel. That's heartrending. Yeah. It's heartrending to hear. Well, I think it was Taz who said, his speaker who said, they called me chink and nobody came to my rescue. And I think that's the part. It's like, what's the part of the bystander in all of this? And then what's the part in our political system as well? Like we have to hold people more accountable to, yeah. So congratulations. I thought this was a brilliant and very, very, very difficult, very, very wonderful script.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. And for those of you who may not know, it was because of Barbara that we actually started a Readers Theater. It was Barbara, made it possible at Drexel University, and then with Toby, and then with Amy Blum. I mean, these were the originals.
Schumann.
Yeah, and Schumann certainly eventually joined, but made the money flow, made it possible. So I'm extremely grateful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else would like to share? And any comment is most welcome. We're all friends here.
If I could just, this reminds me of a quote that's used often, and actually many people have written songs. It's by Martin Niemöller. And, first they came for the socialists. I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak. And I think that's what I hear when you were reading this piece was, especially at the end, if we don't speak out for each other, then there won't be anyone left to speak out for us. So it's a very powerful message that you always present. And I agree with Barbara. I think this was very, very hard hitting and direct and clear, a very clear message.
Thank you. And that's an excellent quote. Yes, that was definitely in mind, for sure. And I just like to say that when I was doing the research, the thing that really hit me, and it's so obvious, but it just wasn't as apparent in many ways, that there are people who definitely are working hard to divide us. We know that, but it's so purposeful. It's so purposeful because when house divided can't stand. So when you're divided, then you don't have power. And that's the beauty, I think, of our Readers Theater, is that we are not divided. We are working together to bring our messages. And that's what inspires me, when we are all working together, because I feel that there's hope, because there's so many people out there who prefer that we aren't divided, because for them, that's the way they can become more powerful. And that's so frightening and upsetting. So.
Michael mentioned about why this behavior is permitted. And it's even deeper than that. It's not only being permitted, it's being promoted.
Yeah.
That's the real problem, especially now.
Especially now, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else want to say something?
I just want to say that I am.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Because I was a member of the cast, so go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Alexis. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you here. I'm just well done, everyone. I really enjoyed this presentation. It's so be touched, and I may want to share an experience. So, I'm an Asian, you can tell, right? So I'm a Chinese, and recently there's something happened to my friend, and I was like, I can link it to the presentation here today. So what happened to her is, this semester she's a student. So for some Asian, maybe Chinese, some of us, like, we not read because we are non-native speakers. So we may not, like, our English is may not as good as native speaker in spoken, in written, in some other ways. So when we are doing a team project in class, not many students would like to be a team member with us. And she's so upset. She told me that the first day she like sitting in the class, and the teacher, the instructor want them to be grouped in 4 teams or 5 teams. I couldn't remember, but she told me that only her and the other 2 Indian girls, they have no groups, and no one would love to ask them to join them. So she was so upset about this. And she's the only like Chinese girl in that class, so she couldn't find anyone to help her. And these things, I think it might happen to me, but because when I was a graduate student, there at least 4 or 5 Chinese students in the class. So at least we can be like form a group. Mm-hmm. But that's what sometimes teachers say, they don't want like the same race student to be in same group. So they don't want all the team members are Chinese, because we can talk in our own language. Mm-hmm. And it won't help us in improving our English in written and spoken. So she wants us to divide it. But the thing is, if we all be separated to be join in a foreign group, like maybe 3 white students and maybe 1 Indian student, they talk so fast, we can't follow them. These are things. It doesn't because we don't want to be a good team member. It's because we don't know how to be a good team member and how we can support our team. Sometimes just happen to make us feel like upset. And also this semester, I was shadowing a class. I sit at the really back of the classroom because I can observe all what students doing. And you can see like all the Asian students, they all sit together. There are 4 Asian girls, they all sit in like as a group. And when they're divided, they want to be form a group, you always see that they form their own group. They talk in Chinese and they want to talk in English because it's easy way to express their like opinions, suggestion. So yeah, that's what I observe like in daily life. But at some point, something just made me feel so upset, disappointed.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I wish I could be the teacher of that class, boy. We whip them up into shape. We make it all work.
You're good. I enjoy the class, your class,
Yeah. Well, I so enjoyed, and that's what makes me so upset, because I know how wonderful all of my students are from all these different countries, and it's so tragic that a lot of American students who have only learned with their own groups are still not open to the idea of learning. And what's the point of being a graduate student? You're going for a PhD. I feel sorry for these people who are not opening themselves to new ideas and new styles of working and learning. What kind of PhD students are these? I really feel sorry for them. You're going to be in a better position because of all the experiences that you have. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Brenda, I know you wanted to say something.
Well, I'm very sorry for your experience as well. But it always amazes me that people are telling other people or other ethnicities to go home, and nobody in America is an quote unquote American, because the people who were here when this country was found, well, it wasn't founded, it was here. So when people came here to this country, there were people here. And those people are the ones who were so discriminated against more so than anyone. And so it always just amazes me that, how are you? And they come on television and they say, I'm an immigrant. And I'm like, well, why are you telling other immigrants to leave this country when you're an immigrant yourself? So I never understand that. That always amazes me. When people do that, it's it's really confusing for me. The American concept or whatever it is that they call it. It always amazes me. But these things, history is something that I believe is passed down. It's not just passed down in books, but it's passed down orally. And so, we have to kind of like come together and start passing down our oral histories to our children and to others, like to be in environments where we can pass it down. Like this evening, we passed down some oral history to everyone who came. So I was glad to be part of it. Thank you, Alexis.
Oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Yeah.
All of us were immigrants at one point.
Right.
We all
Exactly. Still are, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Anybody else want to share something?
Thank you. Thank you so much for writing the script. It is really brilliant, and everyone did a great job. You just, even narrating in different parts of reading the script. It just reminds me of how much work we have to do as a community, and just passing on better legacy to our children, of kindness and of tolerance and not making just reading the messages about what will the next what will my children experience and those types of things. Just we have to do a job at passing on a better legacy to our children of kindness and positivity, so that they can live in a better world. So thank you for writing this script.
Oh, thank you, Denise. Thank you so much for all of your participation. Yeah, thank you. Okay, you want to go ahead? Yeah,
I always
quality. It's the quality, not the quantity.
Yeah. And I always afraid that, the American people like say some jokes and I can't tell, what is the jokes and what has not. So I just don't want them to laugh at me, but I'm just afraid of that time when they speak some jokes to me, because sometimes I don't know what's the point and I don't know why there's like people all laughing. So
one of the things I can offer is there were a few times when Alexis' class for international students and my class for intercultural communication with American students were able to get together. This is at Drexel, and have some one-on-one conversation and ask each other questions and talk to each other. American students, although they look, very easy they're very easy in general to talk, and very, a lot of times they'll raise their hand and just talk until they have an answer. This can happen. But, I found out that they're afraid to say the wrong thing. They're afraid that they're going to make a mistake too. They're afraid that they might say something and everybody will shun them or, punish them on social media. And they're very curious too, and sometimes not quite so brave or so self-confident as you may think. So they have everything, my students have everything to learn from international students. It's the one chance they get in the United States to meet someone and to be able to actually ask questions to learn about someone else. That's not the only chance they get in the United States, obviously, but it's the chance they could have in a classroom to meet people. So please, Wenting was also saying that it's easy then that Chinese students can get together and speak their language, and sometimes the American students don't know how to get in that either. So I just like to encourage you to take the initiative, try to, if there's somebody who looks that you'd like to get to know, or, say hello, say your name, ask them something. And you might be surprised. They're not quite all so together as you think.
And they don't always get the jokes either, I can assure you. So you just laugh and pretend that you got it, and that's it. Move on. Yeah.
I started learn some jokes in English.
That's good. Anybody else would like to say something? Margaret,
I could just, anybody else?
Toby.
Well, I just want to say that there were a lot of ideas that were brought forth at the end, and I just want to make sure that one of the ideas is to vote. We have an opportunity, people were saying, to make sure that we have the right leaders. So those of us who are able to vote, who have the right to vote, who worked very hard for the right to vote, women, people of color, all kinds of people didn't have the right to vote in this country. We've only had the right to vote as women for 100 years. So I just want to say that just make sure we use that vote wisely, and that we get other people to do that as well, and that we get our family and our friends and anyone who turns 18 in this country by November 8th, as long as they're registered to vote, can vote.
Yeah, thank you for all the work you're doing on that, Toby. We salute you. Yeah. So anybody else? So Francie, I want to thank Francie again very much for co-hosting, for helping with this. And also, Francie brought in a former student of hers on. She was not able to join us. She's on a trip now back to Vietnam, but she played a Vietnamese, and she actually is a Vietnamese. And I want to congratulate Francie on what you've done to make it possible for her to join us. And I think she did a really wonderful job.
Everybody did, but yes, I'm very proud of her too.
Yeah, and Shumin and Taz, people I've worked with who are like
Taz, oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, Taz obviously couldn't make it, but Shumin, wonderful.
Shumin,
everybody who participated. Margaret, thank you so much. Mike, thank you so much.
And your Mike.
And my
Fantastic.
Mike and Lucy. Yeah, I'm extremely grateful. And those of you who came to visit, and I don't know if I mentioned Margaret,
Alexis, I wanted to thank you. You did a great job. As always, can you possibly give us all a little behind the scenes idea of what's coming next?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. The next is all about children. It starts with the thinking that children are not bad. So what is it in our society, in our country, in our world that is creating such situations that so many children are ending up depressed, suicidal, in jail? So that's what we're working on. And also I'm going to increase the one on anti-Semitism, and maybe for Martin Luther King Day, we'll increase the one that expand the one that we have on racism. So there's a lot going on, and anybody who isn't a member yet, who would like to be a member of our group, we welcome you. I look forward.
It's very fulfilling. Even if it's not perfect. It's very emotional, and just to be a part of it. And I'm really pleased that Chao and Wenting came and you shared with us how your experiences and your feelings, and that makes it worthwhile.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, thank you all.